Hey managers, I wanted to jump on and make a video for you as the on-call manager group, um, just to kind of talk about the increase in call-ins that we've had. Now, I've thought about this from a couple directions, like, is it actually an increase, or are we just having a larger volume of staff in general that we're taking care of so that the call-ins are going to be more? What has changed to make this happen? And I think we're still just rounding out the first year where you guys are managing this exclusively and I'm not doing it anymore. But I am kind of following your work, and I can say that I think this, and I've also heard that feedback from other people, that it's a lot less intimidating to call into you than it was to me. Totally understand that. I can buy it, but it doesn't make it any more acceptable, and it actually means that we need to sharpen ourselves on this a little bit more. So that's what I wanted to hop on and talk to you about. A couple things that I want to do to help to make this a little bit better. First of all, we need to start documenting these call-ins. That's the only way amongst a larger group of on-call managers that we have that we can help to track any particular team members who might be taking advantage of the situation. So we created a Google Sheet that we shared with each of you. It's broken down by department so that you can kind of log whatever the call-in and the reason was. So it would go like this. If you had a team member named Susan and she called in for her bather shift at the resort, you would open up the on-call manager's call-in sheet. You would click on the resort tab, and then you would log down Susan and her call-in, her reason, what time she called, and what time her shift that she was calling out for was. And then periodically, if you are a department manager or the assistant managers can take a look at that, and we can say, hey, Susan has a history of calling in and she's got the same excuses all the time. And that department manager can start to work with Susan directly on whatever her issue is and getting it resolved, or at least warning her that we are aware it's an issue and we want to work with her to manage it. So disciplinary action can come to follow. The other thing is, if you're going to that sheet and you're going to log Susan's, her call-in or her absence, and you look ahead, or look back rather, on, instances before where Susan's called with this issue, you could go ahead and get the department manager involved at that time and just say, hey, how would you like me to handle this? She's called in for the same issue numerous times, I see. What can be done right now? So this is what I used to do. Again, smaller group, it was a little bit easier to keep track of, but if I had a Susan on my hands who was a chronic call-in person and was using the same excuse over and over again, I would right away say, hey Susan, I'm sorry your stomach's acting up, or whatever again. You need to take this day and you need to go to a doctor and don't come back to work until you have an excuse. Or Susan, with the same car issue again, or whatever it is, you can't come back to work until we know that this is resolved, because it's not just this day that we're worried about, it's all the future days as well that we're worried about, and you're becoming unpredictable. So I think sometimes using those types of scenarios and just saying, okay, well, we're going to give you time to figure this out, but there's also this other ultimatum that you have to surpass before you return. A lot of times that can help to slow someone down, if not nip it in the bud. So I'd like to see you guys working together to do that. And again, you do it just like I just described. Use that call-in sheet, look back and see the frequency of issue, reach out to the department manager and ask them how you want them to handle it. I know our department managers well enough to know that if you're offering to help them, they might not mind being interrupted for a small scale thing like that, so that they don't have to deal with the whole summation of the ordeal when they find out about it. The last part is you have to help them to find out about it. So Sending them a message in Humanity, I think, would be the best way to say, here's the action that I took. That way it can become part of the documentation that goes with it. So let's play out this whole scenario. Susan with a chronic stomach issue, she calls in. You take the phone call and you say, hey Susan, I see you've called in numerous times before. You need to resolve your issue by going to the doctor and bringing a doctor's excuse and letting us know what your plan is going forward. We want to know that you're going to be able to do your job safely for yourself and safely for others by the time that you get back. So I'm going to ask that you come with a doctor's excuse. So then you get Susan off the phone, you get her shift filled. I want you to send Susan at the resort team, I want you to send the resort department manager a Humanity message saying, this is what you did, and this is what they should expect from Susan. And then that resort manager, the ball's in their court to do whatever. They should ideally meet with Susan when she returns to work, receive that return to work order from her doctor, and make a plan going forward. You guys, we can't just accept that people will call out regularly and have no accountability to that. So if it's an actual issue, this is how we deal with it. Also, people in Susan's case who would be calling out regularly and possibly taking advantage of the situation. Sometimes it's not medical, sometimes it's just bad luck. And so for those situations, I do want you to have a heart. You know, if it's their first instance of bad luck, well, that just happens. Bad luck being like a pipe burst in my house, or my water heater leaked, or I've got this sick kid, or my sitter is sick, or, you know, these one-time things where just stuff happens and you have to be understanding about it. Versus chronic bad luck, which is where maybe that situation's happened 2 or 3 times in a short period, like a month or 2. So that would be too frequently where you're like, okay, are they having a string of bad luck, or is this just a thing? If they're having a string of bad luck, or if you feel like they're taking advantage of the situation, do not have shame in asking them to help find their own coverage or come in. And then also help them to try and come up with their own solutions. So that might look like this. I'm going to use Bob this time as an example. So Bob is a nurse. He's calling out for a Sunday shift and he's having a string of bad luck, or he's taking advantage and making up stories. So Bob's called in. He's like, hey, I'm not going to be able to come in. You notice this trend. You can say, hey, Bob, you need to find a replacement team member for you. He might say, oh, I can't. I know that's going to be really hard. Or he might say, I'll try, and then call back and say, it was really hard and I didn't figure it out. You can say, Bob, okay, depending on your situation, maybe I can allow you to come in a little bit late, or maybe I can allow you to figure out how to get here, depending on what their problem is. If people are having trouble with transportation, there's Uber, there's phone a friend, there's, call a coworker, call a parent. There's all kinds of things to try and get them here. If they're having trouble at home, you can offer them to have a friend come to their house. You need to sometimes put these obvious situations in front of people so you can help to determine how committed they are, or help people who are in desolate situations to think of obvious things that they couldn't have thought of on their own. Regardless, if you notice a trend or whatever kind of solution that you noticed, you need to put it out there to that department manager so they can follow up. I just want to see us as a group of assistant managers and call-in managers and department managers to band together and strengthen up a bit so that we're not taken advantage of a group. Like I said in the very beginning, maybe this is not even an issue at all, but it's good practice because it likely could become an issue if it's not already. And then also, if this is just a general increase in volume, it's something that we can really be aware of. But I have a suspicion that it's that there's not a lot of intimidation factor between you and between me. So we want to put that there to make it a little bit more difficult for people to call out. Not unreasonably difficult, but a little bit more difficult. And at minimum, hold people accountable to the responsibilities of their position. So that means that you need to sharpen up your language a little bit, and you need to not accept every call in, but put some challenges up a little bit. please practice this. Please come see me if you have questions. I hope that this video was okay. It seemed more convenient than calling a particular meeting. So this all starts today. You've all had the sheet shared with you, and I'm here for questions or concerns as they arise. Good luck, you guys.